All right, good morning, everyone. I am Danae Wolf, the EdTech Specialist for OSU Extension. I am joined here by Jamie Sager, our Program Director for the EdTech Unit here at Ohio State University Extension. Hey, Doug, there you are. Doug is our sole participant with the video feed. One of the things we've been trying to encourage people over the summer is as you start to use Zoom more and more, we're encouraging people to go ahead and get webcams, get a microphone if you don't already have one. A lot of computers, like laptops in particular, have built-in webcams and built-in microphones, but the CFAES Zoom portal does have stuff like that listed on their website. So if you don't know what to get, they have some recommendations for tools that they support and they can help you with. It helps to make, particularly like meetings, it just helps to make them way more personable because you can see each other and see how people are reacting or whether they've fallen asleep, or it feels more like a face-to-face meeting, I suppose. So today we are going to be talking specifically about how to market Zoom webinars and Zoom meetings. A lot of what we'll talk about is relevant to both the webinar platform and the meeting platform. Just like all of the programs we've been doing all summer, this is meant to be informal and participatory. So I hope that you will not hesitate to interrupt me if you have questions, or use the chat box to ask questions. Jamie did just put the Zoom portal link into the chat box. And before we go any further, I'd like to ask, has everybody actually signed in to their Zoom Pro account? And you can use, if you pop up the manage participant or participant pod, you'll get some reactions that you can actually say yes, no. You can give me a thumbs up. Debbie says yes, Doug says yes. Has everybody downloaded the Zoom client on your desktop? Because I found that to be really, really helpful for scheduling meetings and managing meetings. Some people have said yes, some people have said no. These are all things that are accessible from that Zoom portal. There's a whole download section that you can download, not only the Zoom desktop client, but also the Outlook client. So that will allow you to have a little Zoom link in your Outlook window, and you can schedule meetings directly from there and email out the invites to everybody within our Outlook contact list, which is everybody at the university. So that makes things really, really easy for scheduling. So I highly, highly recommend that. But again, today we're talking about Zoom marketing. So I am going to share my screen. We have just a PowerPoint with some basic things that we'll talk about. Okay, so everybody should see my PowerPoint presentation, right? Teaching with Zoom, marketing and promotion. So the first thing I want to talk about as we talk about marketing webinars is that you should consider the entire picture. You should look at marketing your Zoom webinar very holistically. And what I mean by this is, oops. Oh, now I can't go back. You need to ask yourself some basic questions. What we find is that when you're marketing a Zoom webinar or any kind of online engagement, it's about more than just the program itself. You have to ask yourself questions like, who is my audience? When would be the best time to host this webinar? When would be the best topic? Is this topic relevant to more than just the audience that I'm targeting? Could it be relevant to a wider audience as well? And a good way of looking at this, like I used to do a lot of invasive plant presentations when I was an educator in Summit County. And I might say, well, I'm gonna host an invasive plant webinar for my Master Gardener volunteers. But then ask yourself, well, who else might be interested in this? And then you might expand that reach to, well, maybe any landowner in Summit County. And then maybe any park resource manager in Summit County who's managing land for parks in particular. And then you can start to expand that reach slowly. That's one of the huge benefits of webinars in particular is you're not just limited to your geographic region. Now, the topic that you're teaching might be limited to that geographic region, but the beauty of Zoom is now you can have webinars we have licenses for up to 500 people. So imagine having an audience that is reaching people from not just all corners of the state here in Ohio, but maybe people out in California, if you're doing a program that's relevant to them. Now, certain programs are going to maybe not be geographically relevant to that wide of an audience. If you're teaching about maybe like a specific crop pest or like an invasive plant, which would only be relevant like here in the Midwest. But if you're doing like a 4-H topic, youth development, or like, let's say you want to do something on maker spaces, that would be relevant to probably a huge wide arena of people. So think about that as you, I'm going to pause share here for a second. Think about those types of things as you, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to make it not full screen. And Jamie, I don't know if you know how to do that. Right now I have like full screen PowerPoint, but I'm trying to bring up.
Usually to get around that, I just share my entire desktop and not just the PowerPoint window. And sometimes I can get around it that way.
Yeah, this isn't working in the way that I wanted it to work.
If you're wanting us to be able to open up the places where we can say yes, no, and things like that, all we have to do is hover over the bottom of our window and open up the participant list.
See, and I can't even, I wanted to bring up notes. I have a whole thing of notes to make sure I'm hitting on all my points. And I have no way of making this not full screen.
Well, and the Mac's usually different too with the PowerPoint, like pulling up the full presentation.
I always like to tell people when we're on these Zoom programs is that like we're all learning together, and I hope that that's okay with everybody, because I'm always like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're all learning together. And that's the beauty of us doing these trainings right now, is because, you know, it's sort of like we're not with a wide audience of 500 people all over the nation who are like, you have no idea what you're doing. Let me see if I can do this again. Okay, so what are you seeing now?
I'm seeing your slides. We can see your slides over off to the left-hand side, but now we can just see the big slide.
Yeah, and Kristen said if you hover over the top, it's under view options. I don't have that though as the host.
Right, yeah, it's different when you're hosting.
Because I wanted to have like my PowerPoint and then like my notes over here in a Word document, and that's just, it looks like that's not going to happen.
You know, Danae, I don't think, probably why I haven't run into this is because usually I have like a printed copy of like my notes sitting beside, so that I'm going back and forth.
If you have multiple monitors, you should be able to, but it looks like you're looking at one monitor.
Yeah, I only have one.
But that's one way to do it, is to, when you're doing the share in the Zoom meeting, you can say share monitor 1, and then only you see monitor 2, but everybody else is looking at monitor 1.
See, that's what I need to do then in the future.
Can you do a split screen?
I don't think so. Not probably super easily that I can figure out.
I don't know how to do it on a Mac, but on a regular computer, listen to me, you snap it to the side and it's a half screen.
I know, these darn Macs get me into so much trouble sometimes.
The better computers.
All right, well, sorry about that little break in there. We are going to go, I'm still recording, right?
I believe so.
Okay, it says, okay, there we go. Okay, we're gonna go on. So consider the big picture when planning your webinar. Think about everything in addition to just like, I'm gonna teach this topic and then I'm gonna try to market it and hope that it goes over well. Consider the big picture. Now this isn't even working. There we go. The other thing that you have to think about is timing. Now, sometimes this might seem like a, well, duh, you know, we always have to think about when we're gonna plan the webinar for. But what we might not consider is if you do have a topic that has the potential to reach a very wide audience, and you schedule it for 9 o'clock in the morning, are you going to reach people from California? Because it's going to be what time in California? 5 or 6, right?
Too early.
Yeah, exactly. Too early. And we have colleagues that we have worked with informally from like Hawaii, and they kind of like, you know, we've just gotten used to having meetings at weird hours. You know, we've just gotten used to having to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and sit in on a webinar and then go back to bed for a little while and then get up and start our real day. But if you are hoping to reach a national audience, research shows us that the best time of day to host those programs would be 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then the best days of the week are midweek. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. People sometimes have a difficult time getting up and started on Mondays. And then by Fridays, and we're breaking our own rule here, by Friday, sometimes people are checked out. Or in the case of this weekend, it's a nice long weekend that I completely forgot about it. It's Labor Day weekend. So people probably just aren't working today because they wanted to take advantage of that already long weekend. So do be aware of when you're planning that. Ag Chat. Has anybody participated in a Twitter chat called Ag Chat on Twitter? Jamie's raising her hand. Doug's saying, yeah, I know of it. Awesome. So Ag Chats are, I believe, Tuesday evenings at 8 to 10 p.m. in the evening. And the reason why it's so late in the evening is because their audience is people working in agriculture. So farmers out in their field. And their best time of day that they can sit down and spend time thinking about some of the questions that they ask is in the evening hours, as opposed to during their workday. They're not going to come in off the tractor if they're out planting or harvesting. They're not going to come in to sit on Twitter for 2 hours, but they might do that in the evening. So do be aware of your audience. Those are just some very, I think, basic and intuitive ways of looking at marketing. The other thing is use registration. If you've scheduled a Zoom webinar or a Zoom meeting, you probably have seen that there's a registration option. You can do that for both meetings and webinars. For webinars in particular, I highly, highly recommend you take advantage of this. And when you request your webinar license, they will give you a license so far in advance so that you can go in and actually schedule that webinar and set it up. I will show you the back end of that because we don't all have webinar licenses automatically. You have to go in and request one if you plan to host a webinar. And there is a really, really great training on YouTube. It was like, I think about an hour long, hosted by Zoom employees, all about how to create a Zoom webinar, because sort of the interface on the back end of Zoom is a little bit different than scheduling just a Zoom meeting. So I will take you into there for a few minutes and I'll show you around. Registration is very helpful. One of the things though that I think we need to be aware of is not asking people for information that we don't plan to use. And for me personally, I have registered for programs before where they've asked for things like a mailing address or a phone number. And that sort of sends a red flag, like, how are you using my phone number? Because I'm scheduling for this like webinar. Like, are you going to give me a call? Are you going to sell my phone number? Are you going to, who knows? And you might notice if you put in information like that online, you might get more spam phone calls. Has anybody noticed that in the past? Or maybe an email address, you registered for something and now all of a sudden you're getting tons of spam email and you're just like, where did this come from? I tend to be very cognizant of where I put my personal information. So when you are scheduling a Zoom webinar, don't ask for people's mailing address unless you intend to send them mail. Don't ask for people's phone number unless you plan to call them. Now you might want to ask for something just for your own information, your own like data collection. You might want to ask like, what state are you from, or what county are you from, or what city, just so that you can see the overall reach of your program and to see, oh wow, like I actually had participants from California or from Hawaii. That might be good data for you to collect, but it's not so personal that people are going to feel like, why did they need my mailing address? So only collect information that you're going to use. The other thing I would highly, highly recommend that you do if you schedule a Zoom webinar, in the registration, put a little box or somewhere that people can, I don't know exactly if it can be like a radio checkbox or a yes or no, but ask people if they want to sign up for a newsletter or your mailing list, whatever you use. And if you don't have a mailing list right now and you're a county educator or program specialist, I really highly recommend you start a listserv. Start some sort of subscription that you can start to market programs for. Because if people really, really like your webinar, you can have the potential of creating a repeat customer. And now you have their permission to send them future promotional materials. So always make sure you ask for that. Any questions so far? I know some of this might be super basic and you're like, well, yeah, duh, this all makes sense. But any questions or comments? I don't see anything coming into the chat box. Oh, there's one. Jamie, it looks like you might have a question.
Yeah, I was responding to Debbie. So she asked about the webinar license, and maybe I'll just answer it here in case anyone else is wondering. She wanted to know if it was per webinar or per person, and she wanted to know if, Debbie, maybe you can explain a little bit more, but you're asking, do you need to request the license and then get approval for that and get the information before you schedule it? Is that what you're asking?
Sorry, it sounded like what she was saying is that the webinar license is for like a one-time use only. So if I requested that I wanted to do a webinar, every time I want to do a webinar, I have to ask for the permission to do a webinar, instead of me as Debbie Lewis, I want to do like a Vita training or something like that using Zoom, I can set that up as a webinar instead of setting it up like a meeting. So that's what I was asking. So is it per use per webinar, or is it per person? Me as the person.
It's per use. So we have, and Ken corrected me last time on this, I'm trying to remember. I think we have maybe 5 licenses for up to 500 people and 10 licenses for up to 100 people. So
okay,
if
but
you're
those are rolling per meeting then, or per webinar. They can transfer from person to person.
Yes, so that's the CFAES has those licenses, and then they assign them to people on an as needed basis. So like I had to request a webinar license for today's program just so that I could get into the back end of Zoom and show you what that webinar license looks like, which I'm going to do here in a few minutes. I didn't actually schedule a webinar because we're on a meeting platform right now. You can, when you're requesting the webinar license, if it's going to be a recurring meeting that happens at like the same time, same place every month, you can actually put that in there. And then I think they can like automatically schedule you to get that webinar license as needed, but you don't just have that all the time. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. Again, feel free to interrupt me anytime or just put questions into the chat. We'll be checking those. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is email marketing, and this is sort of twofold. Not only do you have the ability to market your programs just to new audiences through email, but then once you start to collect registrations, you can use email marketing to send people reminders about your upcoming program. We see, research shows us that if you start marketing your webinar up to or more than 7 days in advance of your program, we see a 36% increase in participation and registrations. So don't wait until the last minute to start marketing, just like face-to-face programs, that's very similar. But then once you start to get registrations in, Zoom actually has this really nice feature that you can go in and schedule emails to go out to all of the people who have registered. So you can say, I want everybody who registered to get an email reminder 24 hours in advance. And then that will include the link to the webinar. And then I want them to also get a reminder 1 hour in advance of the program. And I always like to send out my email reminders. I sent mine out, I think 15 minutes before 10 a.m. this morning. Just as a reminder, like, here's the link. You don't have to like dig through your email to find that link if you haven't already added it to your calendar. Email marketing is really, really important. It's probably one of the best ways you're going to reach new audiences, that and social media. Does everybody have an email list that you use for those on today? Doug is saying yes. Some people saying no. I can talk a little bit about some of the, and at least in my opinion, the best ways to start to generate an email marketing list. One way would be to, as you start to do more and more Zoom webinars, ask people like, do you want to be added to my email marketing list? And that can help you start to build that list a little bit. I highly, highly recommend that you start to have an email list. And for some people like Debbie Lewis, you're in a position, and you know, Jamie and I are in that same position where the audience that we're reaching is primarily internal. So we sort of have these built-in email lists through like the extension miscellaneous listserv. But then we can also create email lists through like our blog that might reach people who are outside of Ohio State, who might be interested in the work that we do. If you are a county educator or a program specialist, state specialist, I highly, highly recommend you start to generate that email marketing list because it can be so, so fundamentally important for the work that you do. Email is one of the primary ways that we stay up to date with organizations and businesses. It's one of the primary ways that they market stuff to us. So email is so important. And I am going to now go into, if I can find it, the back end of a Zoom webinar, like schedule a webinar. Can you guys all see my screen here? Okay, so first I will show you the Zoom portal. If you haven't been to the CFAES Zoom portal, this is what it looks like. It's just go.osu.edu, or the URL is osu-cfaes.zoom.us. And there's a lot of different great information here just on this page. There's a download tab that'll take you to the downloads page, and then there's a sign in tab that will allow you to sign in through single sign-on login. And then down here at the bottom right is the request a webinar license. So if you click that, you can put in all of your event information, your contact name, put in extension for your department, when you are planning on hosting it, the date, the time. Do you require host support? This means do you need somebody on in the background who can be there for like technical support? And if you do, then CFAES IT will hopefully assign you somebody. Do you need a room connector, which means are you trying to link this to like one of the rooms on campus? Cloud recording, we technically are not in like the priority area for cloud recording. And anytime you record a Zoom meeting, it just gets recorded on your local hard drive. And they only have so much capacity for cloud-based storage, and they have like a whole priority list of who can do that. And it's like people who are doing like statewide, like huge functions sort of at the university level. And then you just hit submit request and they will assign you a webinar license. And once you get a webinar license, you log into your Zoom account online and go to the webinars tab. Right now, if you try to do that, it'll probably just say something like, you don't have a webinar license, contact your like management person to ask about how to do that. So we're gonna just do a test schedule right now. My webinar, we'll just do test webinar. You can type in all of this information. We'll do it for today at 11, an hour. Here's that button where you can say it's a recurring webinar. Now, if you click that, and I thought this was in here too, actually it's not in here, but in the comments on the request a webinar license, if you did have a recurring meeting, you can say like, this is going to be a monthly webinar. Can I like have it automatically scheduled that I get the webinar license? Do you want registration required? We're gonna say yes. That way I can collect people's information. Anybody has to register for that program. Do you want your hosts and panelists to have their video default to turn on or off? I always typically select off for myself just so that I can make sure like when I'm ready to turn on my camera, I can turn it on. That's a default setting that I've changed in my desktop client as well. Do you want Q&A enabled? I would highly recommend you have Q&A enabled so people can ask you questions. You can also enable a practice session or even require a webinar password. And if you wanted an alternative host, like let's say for some reason you thought maybe you wouldn't be able to make the webinar, you can type in a alternative host here, and that person can log in and have full host privileges. So Jamie and I tend to do that with each other a lot, just in case one of us is sick or running late. You know, one of us can log in and still have all of those host privileges. So now you can just hit schedule, and now you have a bunch of other really awesome things here that can help you with marketing. And one of them is email settings. So confirmation email, blah, 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 blah. I'm only seeing half my screen here, that's why. So you can see email reminder to attendees and panelists. You can edit this and actually create, I wanna do 1 hour before, I wanna do 1 day before, I wanna do 1 week before, and you can actually you can put in everything that they're gonna get right here. And they will automatically get those reminders. So it's a really, really nice way of like, you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to touch it. Anybody who is registered for that program is going to automatically get those email reminders. And you can edit this for however you want, whatever you want it to say in there. Does the alternative host have to be a CFAES employee? Yeah, I think Jamie's right. I think they have to have a Zoom Pro account. I think they have to be within our organization. So they would have to be, I think, within the CFAES thing.
Hey, Danae, I missed where do they register? Where do they actually like do you give them a link or something to go register online ahead of time or
Yeah, so invite, register. Okay, so here's the link right here.
okay.
So there's like all these different tabs here that offer different editing ability for your Zoom webinar, and under the invite attendees tab is your registration link. And I think if you trying to find a way to edit this so that we know exactly what they are asking for. And Jamie, maybe you know better than I do. Where can you edit?
If you think you go into advanced options, so if you go back into edit the webinar, there's a little button down below. It says
I think
advanced
that
options.
was just alternative host.
Oh, it's not in there.
I thought it was gonna, maybe if we click this link. Okay, so right now this is just the information that they're collecting. It's just first name, last name, email address, then you have to confirm your email address. But then if you want to add that, like, do you want to subscribe to my email list? That's what I'm trying to figure out how to. This is where you add panelists. So if you want to have guest speakers, for example, you would add them as a panelist here and just add their name and their email address, and they'll get an invite. And they have to use their specific invite, the link that they get in their email invite, to join the webinar. If they don't use that specific link, they will not join as a panelist. They will join as an attendee, and they won't be able to have like video or audio rights. So email invitation confirmation. Notice how it's nice and branded for you, which is nice. I'm not seeing how to edit that, what you ask for, and now I'm wondering if that's like something that CFAES somehow manages, like CFAES IT, and they've only allowed us to ask those things. And if that's the case, maybe we can ask them to add something to that. That's something we can figure out, though. I will check with Ken Kolka on that and see what he has to say. But that's it. It's as simple as that. That's how you schedule the webinar, and then you get this link to registration. You can use that link to email people. You can use it to post on social media. You can use it wherever else you're going to market your programs. And here's where you do polling questions as well. If you're going to have polls come up through your webinar, here's where you can add those polls in here with all of your different questions and answer options. So yeah, I thought that was going to be a little bit more intuitive to figure out how to change that registration, but we'll find out how to do that and get back to you guys on that. So any questions about scheduling your webinar? And the thing that I really wanted to focus on was those reminder emails and being able to send those automatic emails. The other thing that I wanted to show you is, so you can email reminders here, but then you can also email a follow-up email to both the people who attended your program and the people who did not attend. So Zoom will take notice of, okay, this person registered, but they actually did not attend the live program. So you can go in here and edit this, send a follow-up to absentees, and you can choose a time. So maybe one day later. What I recommend doing in your follow-up email is, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, but when you're done recording your webinar, post it online in a publicly like viewable place, or you might want to post it on YouTube as an unlisted program so that only people with the link can view it. It won't be publicly searchable. But then go in here, and when you write your email, include that link so that anybody who wasn't able to attend now has the link to the recording. Does that make sense? But you do want to make sure that you include that link in this email. And then the other option here is to follow up to the people who actually attended the program. And what I would recommend including in here is a link to your evaluation. So if you have some sort of like Qualtrics online evaluation, say, hey, thank you so much for attending the program. We hope you learned a lot. Please take 5 minutes to fill this evaluation. This could be another good spot too to say, hey, if you want to sign up for my email listserv, here's how to do that. And if you're using a service like MailChimp, you can just include a link to your sign up form, and they click that link, it'll take them to the sign up form, they fill out their information, and then MailChimp automatically collects that information for you, and you don't even have to touch it. You just have to include the link in there. So any questions about that?
Okay, one question is like, is there a way to just have it print you or show you like a list of everyone that did attend or did not, and like if they did not, or if they did but they left early? Is there any way to know that? I'm thinking of like,
Mm,
you know, if there was a way to do our, oh, we have to do the child abuse training every year with our
yeah,
volunteers. If
and you
there
have
was
to
a
make
way
sure
to
they
actually
do that.
know if they at least stayed on the webinar the entire time, or if they, you know, bailed early on it or something.
That's a great question. And I have never actually hosted a webinar before through Zoom. I do know that people that I've spoken with, like Mark Lockley or Jamie with eExtension, I know that he always gets that data, and he sent it to me when I hosted an eExtension webinar, and he sent me like the exact text of like who attended. But I don't know that we get data good enough that actually says like this person only was on for 30 minutes out of the hour-long training. Jamie, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, I don't think, I think you can get a list, obviously, of, you know, who came and who participated in the amount, but I don't think you can get
Mhm.
super detailed information.
Right.
Do you know of any, like, is there any other program that the college would have that, I guess I'm thinking of like, I don't know what they're called now, but there was like the Buckeye Learn modules or something where you could go in and like do sometimes we get these required, you must do these data security trainings and
Yeah.
things, but is there anything like that that we as county educators could use where we could have, you know, like if I have my annual, I do the child abuse training together with like an annual training for all my volunteers on a few other topics, and
Mhm.
we always run into, you know, 15 or 20 that I've offered it several times, and then they just, with their work schedules, they can never get to them in person.
Right.
If there's a way to have them log in somehow, or, you know that they actually completed it, and short of, I don't know, sending them a test afterwards or something, which I don't really want to have to.
Well, I'm trying to think because we have like Canvas, which is our new like learning management system platform for the university. So that's how like teachers are creating online courses. And I like you would have to like sign in, but I'm wondering if you could do that and then just like include a link to the video recording and then know that they were like they signed in and they spent X number of minutes in the system, which was the length of the video recording. I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Okay.
And Jamie, I don't know if you have any additional insights in that.
Yeah, I don't. Um, I'm not, we can definitely ask around, see if we can get some information.
Mhm.
That's a really good question. And it may be something where, you know, we need to create a tool or a resource to help with
Mhm.
that, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thanks.
All right, is there any way to improve the mic or sound quality if we have a combination live meeting and Zoom webinar? We've been opening a Zoom meeting during our in-person meetings with computer screen open, but the Zoomers have a hard time hearing the session. Yeah, this is sort of an ongoing issue that we have when we do these combo programs where you have an audience live in person, but then you also have people who are just online only. And really it comes down to having a high quality multi-directional microphone that you can put in the physical space where your face-to-face attendees are. Um, and I don't have a recommendation off the top of my head for that. I know that there are numerous multi-directional microphones out there that are meant for like conferencing situations, like you place it on a conference table and then it can accept like um, audio information from all different directions. But that's probably what you're going to be looking at having to get. Does that answer your question? Some tech friendly, yeah. And there are, especially down, and I know I'm here in Worcester and our OARDC campus, we have some rooms that are meant for like web conferencing as well. But Columbus campus probably almost certainly has stuff like that. And then reach out to the CFAES IT team because they handle questions like that all the time. Those folks oversee some of the web conferencing rooms for campus. So they would be way more in touch with like Randy Nemitz and Ken Kolka probably. They would be way more in touch with like specific tools that you might want to look into getting for situations like that. Yeah, no problem. All right, let's go on. Okay, so social media marketing. So question for you all, what forms of social marketing are you currently using for your face-to-face programming or any program that you do right now in your communities? Is anybody using social marketing of any kind?
I mean, do you mean
Not
like
really.
paid advertising or just, I mean,
No.
we use Facebook and mainly Facebook.
Yeah.
We've done a little bit of Twitter and a little bit of Instagram, but it just seems like we always come back to using Facebook the most because we seem to get the most
Yeah.
reactions or interactions from our posts on there. Um,
Yeah.
but we make occasionally like a YouTube video, but again, it just gets shared through Facebook. It doesn't. I don't feel like YouTube by itself is getting us, it's a platform to store the video, but we have to
Exactly.
share it other places, either through email or Facebook, to get people to actually watch it.
Right. And that's very common, Doug, to sort of use, and I think of u.osu.edu in much the same way. It's simply a place to store content, but people
Yeah,
aren't going on Google and finding us through a Google search. They're
right.
finding us through our other avenues that we've developed, like email marketing or like Facebook marketing.
Yeah.
So
We've
yeah,
done
so this,
S'more too, like I mean, it's like an e-newsletter, s'more.com, but it just makes it look prettier
yeah,
and things. And we were getting pretty good response from that.
good, good. So Facebook, flyers, Google Voice Text works best. Yeah, so social marketing includes pretty much anything that's like online and social. So any type of social media like Facebook. Facebook tends to be our catch-all platform because research shows us that it literally is the catch-all platform. If you have time to invest in one social media platform, Facebook is probably going to be your best bet. Unless you happen to be, let's say, a 4-H educator and your primary or only audience is like that middle school to high school range, because then Snapchat might be your best bet. But as a 4-H educator, you're probably also trying to reach 4-H advisors and 4-H volunteers and 4-H parents, and those audiences tend to not be on Snapchat. They're going to be probably on Facebook. So Facebook is the catch-all. But social marketing also includes things like your email newsletter, which I've mentioned is so vital. It can include things like a blog, a u.osu.edu blog, which is free and intuitive. It's an easy place to simply store content. You can put program information on there, like say, hey, we have this webinar, here's the registration link, and then from there you can just take that link and pop it up on Facebook or throw it in your next newsletter and say, here's the link to register and to learn more about the program and the speakers. So social marketing works really well. In much the same way that you are marketing your current programs, your face-to-face programs, you can use social marketing to market your webinars. But now remember, your audience might be much greater because you're not dealing with a face-to-face program where people have to be physically present. Instead, you might be reaching people from all different avenues. So this is where we can start to get a little bit creative with how do we reach those new audiences that we're not currently reaching with our face-to-face programs. And one recommendation that we have is to take advantage of your existing partnerships. For example, if you are working with a local organization or a state organization or national organization, and you have people that you can reach out to to say, hey, do you mind marketing this program? We know that you're reaching audiences on this topic. We'd love for you to share this out. Or take it a step further and say, would you want to be a panelist presenter for this webinar? And spend 15 minutes discussing what you do and how you've done it in your organization or your state or at the national level. And now all of a sudden you've tapped into that person's expansive network of contacts. And let's say you put together a webinar where you're bringing in maybe it's just a panelist presentation where you have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people from all different organizations. Now you're tapping into every single one of those those people and their organization's respective networks, which is going to grow your network exponentially. And if you do this well and you say, hey, make sure you sign up for future opportunities, you can send that follow-up email to them and say, sign up for our email listserv. Now all of a sudden you're getting email subscriptions from people maybe all over the state or all over the nation that you may not have been able to tap into without those partnership organizations. So you can think really creatively about how you market your webinars, because again, think nationally, think globally, think about how you can expand that network far beyond just your individual network in your community. So any questions or comments about that?
One quick thing today, I've seen when we haven't always formally arranged like something ahead of time with another organization that we work with, but just, you know, at times like we are doing an event and like we took recently a bus trip and we took a bunch of our junior fair board kids to Ohio Farm Bureau's office. So while we were there, we were taking pictures and we tagged them somehow in our comments about the pictures, you know, so then they reshared them and retweeted them and different things. And so sometimes some of the multiplying, you know, or getting that viral effect can happen just even without a lot of pre-arrangement, but just through your regular, you know, tagging these other groups as you're doing stuff. So,
and that's a really good point too. As you start to partner with organizations, you don't necessarily have to rely on them to tap into their networks if you tag them correctly. And Twitter works particularly well for tagging, or Instagram. Tag those networks, and then their audiences will see that they've been tagged, and you've tapped that whole audience. And it took you seconds to do. It wasn't something that you had to think a long time about or really plan ahead. It was something that was very, very easy. And that's the beauty of social media marketing. Is it is very easy, but you do have to think a little bit strategically about it as well. And this kind of goes into our next conversation about increasing your ROI, or return on investment, of the programs that you do. So now that you've taught a program, you've done a webinar, you've reached a certain X number of participants with that live webinar, what can now you do with the recording to increase your return on investment? So has anybody done a webinar or meeting before where you've recorded it and then posted it online for other people to watch? And if not, that's okay. So we'll talk a little bit about how to post on YouTube and how to get that recording up and edited. But the first thing I wanted to also mention is, if you are doing it, especially like a statewide webinar or a national webinar, what I'm seeing more and more is people creating a unique hashtag for that particular webinar and telling people during the program, don't hesitate to go on Twitter and ask us questions using this hashtag. Because now during your live program, you're getting that information out there. And you can also say, don't just ask questions, but post what you're learning about, post what you're most excited about on social media. So now you're getting people who are actually live participants on your program going out and saying, oh, wow, like I'm participating in this program and it's awesome. This is what I'm learning about. So that's one way to increase your ROI during the live program. Debbie said with Riv training in the past, recorded and posted, and we plan to do that with Vita. Yeah, that's awesome. And it's awesome for you because then you don't have to answer the same questions over and over and over too, particularly with a training like Vita or Riv in the past, where people are going to be asking the exact same questions numerous times. And you can always say, hey, you know, we've done a really great training here. Why don't you go ahead and watch that training? It'll give you, you know, everything you need to know, like the basics. And then if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to come back and ask me, and we can go from there. That's a really good way of doing it. So recording and editing, I highly recommend that, even if you don't anticipate having to like post a webinar on YouTube or online for a public audience for whatever reason, maybe it was just something that doesn't make sense to post online, record it anyway. Because you might find that somebody or a group of people keep asking that same question about that same topic. And you're like, well, you know what? I've already done that webinar and we have that content, and maybe I can just use it and send people there. And then you can use those attendees as like maybe program participants. And Debbie can speak more about this next month. We're going to do a whole training on evaluation of webinars and how to do that, and then like kind of where to post in your dossier and how to post those engagement sessions. on your dossier, but you can collect that data of, okay, I did this webinar live in person, I had 100 participants, but then I posted on YouTube, and over the course of a year, I got 500 more participants, and I didn't have to do anything for that. I just posted online and I sent it out through my marketing channels, and it just organically happened. And that's 400 more people that you reach without having to do a tremendous amount of work, right? So record your programs. One of the things that I always like to do with the programs that we do, like these Zoom trainings, is I record it and then I bring it into, I'm again working on a Mac, so I have iMovie on my computer, and I add a little title slide, and then I add a little outro slide that basically says, here's how to, contact us in the future, find out more information, or here's our upcoming trainings. And before I post it on YouTube, I just add those extra touches that help make it branded and look pretty. So I highly recommend you do that. And then find a platform that makes sense for you to post it online. We use YouTube for our EdTech channel. You do have to have a Gmail account to post on a YouTube channel. It's fairly intuitive. It's fairly easy to do. If you have specific questions about creating a YouTube channel for your county or for your program, feel free to reach out to Jamie or I'd be happy to help you set that up. You upload all of your trainings there, and now over time you start to develop a sort of a repository of content that people can go back to and say, hey, you know what, I'm looking for a video on how to market webinars, or I'm looking for webinar best practices. And now we can just send people to our YouTube channel and say, well, we did a program on that, here it is. And we start to increase our ROI that way. Again, I'm not going to get too heavy into electronic evaluations because our next training, first Friday of October, 10 a.m., same place, same time, just like always, we're going to have Debbie Lewis and hopefully Kim Showalter come in and help us out with using Qualtrics to develop electronic evaluations, talk a little bit about options for then also gauging engagement and where to put that in our dossier and how to do all of that great stuff. Debbie is way better at explaining that stuff than I am, for sure. But we do have Qualtrics. Qualtrics is a fantastic tool. And I mean, go in and just create a simple, maybe 5-question evaluation after every program. And then you get a link, and just put that link in the chat box at the end of your program, put it in your follow-up email that's going to go out to all attendees who showed up to your live in-person program, and say, hey, please take 5 minutes to fill out this evaluation. It's going to help us improve future programming. It's that easy. Don't think that just because you're on an online platform, we can't do evaluations like we would in person. It's very easy to do.
Danae, I'll talk about this next month, but the only thing I want to caution people that may not attend next month is make sure you contact us if you want to include any EET type of questions that you plan to use for promotion in the future, because we'll have to set up those links for you to the survey so that the PDE unit is getting the data back directly, and then we send that data on to you once the webinar's over.
So yeah, so
complete their evaluations.
Online, so
yeah.
So Debbie, it sounds like you've confirmed we can do EETs. Like we found a way to do EETs through online programs.
Yeah,
or at
well,
least that's
like I said,
works.
we'll talk more about that next month.
Awesome.
We're still coming up with the exact mechanism on how we can do that, but knowing that they can include just a link, and we can send them that link, that'll be good.
That's awesome. Awesome. So yeah, don't hesitate to do evaluations for all of your online programs, and it helps you with data. And I would also caution you, anytime you do an electronic evaluation, try to have a question or two in there about people's connection. Like, were you able to connect okay? You know, when we attend an in-person conference, there tends to be questions like, how was your lunch? How was the facilities? How was, how was the physical space? And we can still ask questions that give us that same type of information back. Like, was this a good platform for learning this type of content? Or did you have any connectivity issues? Those are good questions to include. And then a few additional tips and tricks for marketing. I'll say this in just a few minutes again, but one of my biggest things is, if you want to market future programs, the best way to do that is to start by creating awesome opportunities now. If you go online and you host an amazing webinar, that will speak for itself. And then the next time you schedule a webinar and you reach that same audience with the marketing materials, people are going to say, oh yeah, you know what? I attended Doug's last webinar and it was so awesomely amazing. I have to attend the next one. So start by creating awesome, engaging opportunities for people now, and that will help you market all future programs. With that said, always be mindful of timing. This is something that I'm going to check the time right now. It's 10:51. If you are going to have a webinar that's an hour long, make sure it's an hour long, and make sure you have tailored your content to not go over an hour, preferably leaving some time for questions and comments and discussion at the end. So we tend to not like webinars that are more than an hour. We always try to say shoot for like 45 minutes of content and then 15 minutes of questions and discussion. That tends to be a good go-to, but be respectful of people's time, and don't keep them past that hour-long time limit or whatever you've decided to do. Like a lot of social marketing, we always say include a call to action. So at the end of your webinar, your call to action could be sign up for our newsletter so that you stay in touch with us, or go like us on Facebook, or please take 5 minutes to fill out this evaluation. It keeps that connection going. So rather than just ending the webinar and ending that contact, we want to create a repeat customer. We want that person to come back to us over and over and over. And we want them to tell their friends and family about their awesome experience with us. So create opportunities for them to stay engaged. And that might be liking us on social media, following us on Twitter, emailing or signing up for our email, evaluation, anything. And I'm going to end on this, but I said this before, create amazing opportunities for engagement online, and that will help you marketing all future programs and online opportunities. So that, I think, is the best thing that you can do. So what questions or comments do you all have that span maybe even further than just marketing and promotion? What questions do you guys have about Zoom? Where can we help you? What are you confused by?
Hey, Danae, I just want to say thanks for doing the whole series. I haven't been able to be on all of them live, but I've watched others, recorded and things. And I really appreciate all that you're doing to help us with this type of stuff. One thing I was curious about is kind of more outside of Zoom, but like, do you guys have any good resources on developing apps? Or I'm starting to see that there's some different like online tools you can go to make an app without necessarily having a lot of coding experience, which is my situation because I couldn't do it if I had to code it all myself.
Right.
But even if you don't have anything readily available now, but like if that's something the ed techs could look into maybe for some future training opportunities, or the
Sure.
pros and cons, or what you should really consider and that type of stuff.
We do have a whole, that's something that Jamie and I, we don't have the skill set for, because it is a lot of like coding, and just it gets really, really like fine tuned down into stuff that we just don't have the expertise in. But Ohio State does have, and I'm gonna have to do some searching and I can send you some information, but I think we have like a whole like program of people who look into app development and then can help you with that. And I think they even help with like the intellectual property stuff. And
Danae, they're probably over at ODEE, and they're inundated right now with Vita issues and with Canvas issues.
I bet.
So Doug, it probably wouldn't be something that could happen right away. But I did hear, I can't remember if it was at an annual conference 2 years ago, at our annual conference 2 years ago, or if it was Innovate, OSU Innovate a couple years ago. But there's some kind of company that will develop your app, and then you only have to pay them if you want to take it commercial. But I'll have to look up where that information is.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find resources for you to tap into. I think that we definitely have people at the university level who, if they see a lot of potential in your idea, they can help you. So it just kind of depends on whether you're recreating the wheel or whether there's something existing that might fit your need, or if you're creating something brand new that really fits the need for like your community. But I know we have resources that we can at least start you in the right direction.
Okay. Thanks.
So any other questions or comments about anything? We have lots and lots of training opportunities, lots of exciting things that we're planning for in 2018, things that we're just really looking forward to rolling out in the organization. So stay tuned for all of that. And as always, if you guys have questions or ideas for programs or topics that you really, really need right now, I know we've been focused heavily on Zoom this year. I have a feeling next year we're going to be really focused on Vita, and that's sort of Debbie Lewis's wheelhouse and the PDE unit. So we have lots and lots of stuff happening next year. So yeah, somebody said the nursing college offered a class on building an app a year ago. They shared resources and assistance. That's good to know. I'll do some research for you, Doug, and I'll send you what I find.
Okay.
Yes, the one I was talking about was definitely by a group of, I think it was nurses, about it was like a nutrition app or a food app.
Cool.
If you don't mind, Debbie, while you're on here, I'm just curious, like, where are things? Like, are we going to be able to? I haven't been putting stuff into Riv because I thought we were switched over, but then I just heard recently that we're not ready to put our events into the Vita thing, and so like,
Yeah,
will
Doug,
there
I
be
just had a
training coming up
meeting.
soon, or what's kind of happening there?
I don't want to take up
Yeah.
Danae's time, but I
Oh,
did
I'm done
just
with my
have a
content. So.
I just have a meeting with ODEE this week, and we're trying to set up an email that we can explain, what's going on. But if you have things that you can put into Riv, you can go ahead and put those in because they are still doing that. Remember back in, I think it was the end of May or beginning of June, I sent out the email that said they're doing data transfers every Sunday morning. That is still happening from Riv into Vita. So get your stuff into Riv. You can still use it. If you're having issues with adding events, just let me know because there have been some technical issues in Riv, but we're trying to still put out fires and deal with that. At the same time, we're learning about more and more bugs appearing in Vita. So yeah, we're not quite ready. That's why you haven't seen any trainings come out from our office yet. So we're hoping to send out an email next week and give an update on what's really going on with all of that.
Okay.
So sorry for the delay on that.
That's okay. Yep. Thanks.
Good to know. All right, well, that's all I have for this morning. As always, don't hesitate to reach out to Jamie or I with any tech questions that you guys might have. As the summer slows down, I'm starting to see just a huge influx of questions, people trying to do very specific things. And I love that. We love getting questions like that. So don't hesitate to reach out with us or to us, and we can help you troubleshoot any issues that you're having in your tech world and beyond. We're here for you guys. So thanks for joining us this morning. And we'll get this recording up on YouTube if you want to touch base with it again and look back for information.
Thanks today.
All right. Thank you, everybody.